Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Writing Escapades with me, David Rawding. Today, we're going to talk about setting, and I'm going to try to do an experiment. We'll see how it goes. Let's get into it. For this writing experiment, I'm going to have you thinking about setting. The job of a writer is to anchor or orient the reader into a scene. The character is in the scene and they're moving through a setting, and you need to keep the reader informed about the setting around the character so that they can imagine it in their head. So for this experiment, I'm going to cover the camera. It's going to be dark and it's going to symbolize a blank page. And I want you to imagine that I am a character in a scene. I'll be switching to talking to third person as to demonstrate third person narration of a character named Dave. Now, I think it's important to note that I am not a weirdo who talks about myself in third person all the time, but it's just easier for this experiment if I do. Okay, so I'm going to cover the camera. Okay, so Dave is in a setting, but until the writer gives you, the reader, the details, you have no clue as to where Dave is. What time of day or night is it? Are there other characters in the scene, or is Dave just solo? The writer has to paint the scene with words and pepper in the vital orientation information. We're going to achieve this in a couple of steps. The first step is to give a few basic details to help orient the reader and anchor them into the scene. Here's the example. Dave dropped his sunglasses down and eyed his sand-caked bare feet. He licked his dry lips and tasted salt and sunscreen. With a sigh, he reclined his neck in his chair as a breeze buffeted his warm cheeks. So, at this point, the writer has given you, the reader, a decent amount of information with just a few lines. There's a breeze, so Dave is probably outside. The sun seems to be out because he's wearing sunglasses and sunscreen. And he's somewhere with sand. There's lots of places that have sand, but it's starting to lead you on, and you can start to infer where he may be. Okay, let's see if the writer can fully anchor the reader with a few more details. Dave got out of the beach chair and strode down the gentle slope of sand to the crashing waves. Cries from battling gulls mixed with the murmurs of fellow beachgoers. Flying parallel with the beach, a plane towed a banner that said, "Catch end of summer deals at the New Hampshire Shopping Center." If it wasn't clear that Dave is at the beach, it is now, and likely a New Hampshire beach at that. The season is even helped by the end of summer deals. I'm going to cut into some video of where I actually was. So, not bad. From these details, you can get a scene moving. Now, let's go further down the setting rabbit hole. Now, it's not just about simply describing the place and anchoring the reader. A writer has the opportunity to make their descriptions and setting do more work than that. The setting can help show the reader more about your point of view. As I said, this fictitious story is told through the third-person narration of this character named Dave. The way Dave sees and interacts with his environment is a great place to show the reader who Dave really is. So, say Dave is a character who has been having a bad day, or maybe a bad week, or heck, maybe a bad life. He may have a pessimistic nature, and you can show that through how Dave perceives his setting. Dave might notice the bad things. Here's an example. Dave eyed the sand at his feet, knowing full well that he'd have to vacuum his car out when he got home. The seagulls cried and dove, and Dave half expected one of the mangy sky rats to poop on his head. His neck was getting burned, and his lips were cracked. The stench of kelp and dry seaweed filled his nostrils. Dave rolled his eyes as a kid was flying a kite. See how the things that Dave noticed shows the reader more about his point of view? This is how setting can do more work than just anchoring the reader. It can show that Dave is a bit of a Debbie Downer. So, just for fun, let's have Dave see his setting in a different light. Here's the example. Dave grinned as he watched a father and son splash among the waves. He ground his toes deeper into the sand as if he were getting an exfoliating treatment at a spa. Dave rotated his arms, seeking to balance his tan. He closed his eyes and sighed as the cries of gulls and the crash of whitewater lulled him to sleep. That sounds like a character I'd want to hang out with. And I'm going to take it one step further. So human beings are more nuanced than just being pessimistic or optimistic. We have a lot of feelings, and just like human beings, our characters do too. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you have a character who is cowardly. They get nervous, they get anxious, they're a little on edge. You can show that without having to tell it. You know, the show versus tell is something you'll hear a ton. I don't need to tell you about it. I don't need to hit you on the head about it. Everybody's heard show versus tell. So in this instance, you can show what your character is like by how they interact with their setting. So if you have a character who enters a scene and he's a coward, or he's a cowardly lion, once he enters the scene, he may notice things that link and run parallel to his cowardice. He may walk into a room full of people and he may look for an exit. He may look for a way out, and take another character who walks into that setting, who's confident and stands tall and is an outgoing person. If they walk into a room full of people, they probably won't be looking for an immediate way out. There's a good chance that they'll be looking for other people to connect with. They may have a lot of eye contact because they're confident and they're engaging. They will be completely different in what they notice in a setting. Okay, so that's probably enough for this episode. I think I've hit you guys over the head with this. I wish my experiment went a little smoother, but it's an experiment, so sometimes they go awry. I would like to try more in the future, but we'll see how it goes. If you would like to support Writing Escapades, be sure to give a like, give a comment, hit subscribe. You can buy my books. They're available in ebook, audiobook, paperbacks, anywhere online where books are sold. And links are in the description below. I have one more thing. This is a challenge. This is actually kind of hard, but if you can actively do this, I'll be impressed, and let me know how it goes. So imagine you are a character and you are walking into a new setting. What are the first things that you notice about your setting? Pick 3 things. The first 3 things that you notice in a new setting. Also, now, here's the rest of the challenge. Go to a setting that you are very familiar with, a place you've been 100 times, 1,000 times. Walk into that setting, and the first 3 things that your eyes catch, the first 3 visible things that you see, note those. How is it different when you are going into a new setting versus an old setting? And this is something to think about when you're writing characters. If your character is walking into their living room, they're probably not going to notice the couch or uh, the light that's been there for years. But if your character is walking to this room the first time, they may notice that unique light or the comfy looking couch. Something to think about. It's a challenge. It's actually kind of hard to do because we already kind of walk into some place and you don't even realize that your mind is absorbing all the information. But think about it, and you might be able to use it for your characters. Okay, I've talked enough. I will see you on the next episode of Writing Escapades.